Hey guys, I'm Susanna, this is Jeremy, and we just want to welcome you back to the Imperfect Show. This is where we are talking about couple things, family things, life things, just from the perspective of imperfect people living in an imperfect world. And we just also want to say thank you for all of you that watched our episode last week, and we had some really great comments. And
I was happy anyone watched last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Me too.
It's always good to see someone's watching.
Right. Yeah. We just want to encourage you guys to continue just to keep up with us and share the videos out. If you know of anyone that could be helped by anything that we say, this is kind of why we're doing this. It's just to help other people. Some of the things that we're talking about are things that we're really passionate about and things that have been a help to us and thoughts that we kind of feel like could be a help to other people. So if you know anyone that could be helped by the things that we say, please share that out to them. And just also continue to leave comments about things that you'd like for us to talk about in the future. We've already made notes about some things that people commented about last week. And so if you guys could just continue to do that and let us know just things that you would like for us to talk about and maybe hear a different perspective on it, or anything that you might think that you could need help with. If we can help, I don't know.
We just love to give. We can talk about it.
Yeah,
we
right.
can talk about it.
We'd just love to give some insight into that, into some different topics. So if you guys could continue to help us with that, that would be great. So this week I'm going to start talking about purpose. And that's one of the things that we're going to, really probably the main thing that we're going to talk about today. It kind of goes into some other areas, but really just our purpose. It seems like that a lot of people are looking for their purpose in life and what they should do with their life, and either are maybe kind of haven't found it yet. Maybe they're kind of floundering in that because they don't really know how to figure out what their purpose in their life is. And that's just kind of one of the things that we want to talk about today. We feel really, strong, I guess you can say that word. We feel really strong about people just finding their purpose in their life. And that's one of the things that we do with the people that we work with, is just helping people to identify the purpose for your life and what that should be moving forward for you.
Right.
And just really kind of how to find that. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is how to find your purpose in life and how to live in that and how to move forward in that.
Yep. Purpose is one of those areas that, particularly doing counseling and family counseling and spending time with just about anyone at any stage of life and any kind of place in life, purpose is something that comes up again and again and again. You may be an adolescent getting into your teen years, and you start to look at high school and what comes after high school and what is my purpose and what am I going to do. Our daughter right now is looking at different college options as she gets past one college phase and she's moving into the next one, and she's asking that question, what is my purpose? What am I going to do? Young adults, young married adults with kids, middle-aged adults, older adults, even adults who are, and this is something we've seen recently and had discussions with folks recently, adults who have had an entire really career and they've raised families and they've done those things. Now they're transitioning out either because of retirement or something else that's going on, and they ask the question, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? This is a huge issue, and there are a lot of people who are very frustrated. They get sometimes depressed, and they lose their way. They start to make bad decisions or just stop moving forward at all because they don't feel like they have a purpose. And I think that the place to begin with this discussion, and this is a place that you and I have talked about often, is first of all understanding the purpose generally for all humans everywhere. And if you're not a Christian, this would be probably harder for you to get a hold of or put your hands around, because we are Christians and we approach this from that position. It's maybe a little bit simpler because we've been given our purpose. A lot of places we could look in the Bible. Revelation chapter 4 and verse 11 says that we were created, all of creation is here to give honor and glory to God. So it begins with that premise. The purpose for everything, my reason for everything, or our reason for everything, is to give glory to God. Okay, and that's helpful. And it is helpful.
It is helpful.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
But the real question we're asking, and I'd like to have this conversation first, because we really need to get down to, what are you actually asking me right now? What am I actually thinking right now as I go through these thoughts myself? It's not what is my big purpose as given to me by God. It's what is my place in that big purpose. So the big purpose for all humanity is to give glory to God. What is my place in that purpose? That's what we're really asking. And that's where it gets a little more difficult.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The second thing, and again, we've talked about this, and we'll get into some specifics as we talk through this, but along with that, so it's first of all, what is my specific place in the big purpose? The second part that I think is a challenge is we sometimes believe that there is a singular purpose for our lives. I was created to do this. We'll say things like that. I was created to have this job, to whatever it is. And so we think that's the thing. That's my big purpose, my one thing. There are very few people that actually, for an entire lifetime, do one thing.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that as well, that purpose shifts and changes as life does, and we can talk about that as well. But defining our purpose really comes back to what are my specific talents, gifts, and opportunities, and how can I leverage those to do the big thing, which is give glory to God? How can I, again, a lot of language you could use around this, how can I be the very best version of myself? How can I fully live to the potential that I've been given? Whatever the case, whatever language is used around that, that's really what we're asking.
Yeah.
And we see this played out in so many different scenarios. One of the areas that you and I have seen this is in the context of marriages, and particularly those who are raising children. And sometimes finding your purpose, settling on your purpose, gets really murky when you're trying to raise kids. I know you have these conversations a lot with ladies who, moms who are raising kids. Can you talk a little bit about that, maybe the loss of purpose sometimes in that? Maybe you had a job and now you have kids. Maybe your kids are transitioning and you're trying to figure all that out. What does this search for purpose look like in the context of that relationship?
I think when you were mentioning about being the best version of yourself, or using your gifts and talents and the things that you've been given to leverage that to be the person that lives a life that's giving glory to God. And I think that that really depends on every stage of life that you're in, because I have found, now that we're getting a little bit older, that maybe
you're older. I'm about the same.
Yeah. The gifts and talents that you're given, I don't think that those maybe necessarily change, but they develop in a different way, I think, with every phase of life and every stage of life. And maybe you are not able to use them the same way in every stage of life. And so I think when you're looking at being a mom, and that looks different for everybody. Some people are stay-at-home moms, some people work, some ladies work outside the home. Every family kind of looks different in how they do this, but I feel like as a whole, it can be very easy for a mom to kind of lose sight of that, her purpose and like, what am I supposed to do? Because I have these other things that I feel like maybe I'm called to do, or like you said, I'm created for. I have these
meaning things outside the home,
right?
Is that what you're talking
like
about?
these bigger things that I want to do with my life that does not have to do necessarily with things that are taking place.
I was a graphic designer,
inside the home.
but now I'm working with kids.
Yes.
Right.
So now I'm home, and I'm still working, but part of my life now involves taking care of my kids. And so because it looks different, maybe you are still working, but now you're not able to fully devote your time to your job because now you have other responsibilities that are at home that might take you a little bit away from that, or maybe you're not able to focus all of your attention on that. So I feel like it can be really difficult for women in that situation to kind of lose sight of, well, maybe this is not my purpose anymore. Maybe now I have to pursue something else. And I don't necessarily think that just because you have children, it means that you're not supposed to do this other thing anymore. But now maybe you are going to find out maybe you're gifted in another area, or maybe that you're talented in another area that you didn't know about before.
Right.
And I really feel like that sometimes we look at, especially moms, and I'm speaking from experience, because some days can get so crazy that you literally feel like I am never going to get out of the house. Like my house feels like, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom. And sometimes, if you work part-time outside of the home, or maybe you're home some of the time, weekends can feel like this, where you're like, my house is literally becoming a cage almost for me.
Right.
And I'm never going to get out of it. And there's no way to get out. And sometimes you might even feel like, I don't even know how to be a mom. I don't even know how to be a good mom. Like I'm barely just making it by every single day. And so when you're living like that, it can be so easy to think that you don't have a purpose anymore, or what you thought was what you were supposed to do. Like, oh wow, this has been taken away from me now, and now I can't do this anymore. And so I feel like we spend a lot of time kind of lost in that, and maybe looking for something that's maybe outside of that to kind of get us away from that because we need a distraction or we need something that takes our mind off that. And really, when we have such an opportunity with the people that are in our home to help them find their purpose and to help them be able to grow in that, and as we're training our kids and as we're raising them at home and spending time with them, I feel like we have such an opportunity really to be able to focus on that. And that's a really difficult thing to do.
Yep.
And I feel like ladies kind of get lost in that maybe bigger thing rather than realizing that you have people that are going to be in that same situation maybe someday that are looking for what they want to be doing with their life or what is my purpose going to be, and how much of an opportunity you have to be able to help them be able to grow into that in your home.
Yeah.
And so it's just I think it's really just a tough thing, the mom thing. And I think you were saying just a little while earlier that stay-at-home mom, it kind of is like a horrible...
It's got this heavy negative connotation.
Like you're just stay-at-home.
Oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom.
Just a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
That's what I was for a really long time, or have been for a really long time. Maybe not as much anymore as our kids are getting older, but still, I have had days like that. And sometimes it's a daily thing where you're asking, okay, what is today going to look like? What is, my purpose going to be for maybe just today? Like, how am I going to fulfill that today? This is a really big topic. I feel like we could do a whole episode just on being a parent or being a mom in this. And this is something that I personally am very passionate about because I've really, I feel like been through a lot as a mom, and just learning how to find my purpose, in that, even when I felt like I'm not very good at it, that I am not the best mom maybe that I could be, when I've had a bad day. And I've had so many days where I'm so hard on myself because of that, and really learning how to find joy and how to find my purpose within that role as a mom. And so I think there's so many ladies out there that it's just really, really difficult to be in that place of where you just feel like I'm lost. Like I have no purpose anymore. Yeah. Like really, I'm changing diapers. I'm cleaning up messes. Yeah. I'm wiping faces. Like that's what I'm doing all the time. When
really you need to step back. Someone needs to step back. A person needs to step back and say, this is my purpose right now. I think that we live in this cultural, I don't know what it is, maybe the word is echo chamber, where what we hear all the time bouncing around the walls is, what do you do? Yeah. What is your career? What is your title? And so we get so tied to, my purpose is this job, it's this role, it's this thing. And particularly if you're staying at home taking care of kids, you feel like you don't have that. And so since purpose is tied to a job title, a role at work, those things, well, I don't have that, so I must not have a purpose. I'm just floundering. When really purpose is not tied to a job. A job is something you do. It doesn't make you who you are. It doesn't give you any more or less value. It's something that you do to really accomplish your purpose. And when you recognize that, then if you're staying at home for a period of time because this is the best opportunity for you to influence your children, this is my purpose right now. Right. This is it. This is my purpose. And not only is it okay, it's wonderful that I have the opportunity to fulfill my purpose in this way. There's kind of this flip side to that, which we see a lot as we work with folks who are in the military and they're transitioning out of the military. Really, retirement, probably at any stage of life, military people tend to retire earlier. Right. And so we see this with younger folks who really have a lifetime of work that they could do ahead of them. But also folks who retire out of a job or transition out of a job. It's the other side of what you just said. They've had the title, they've had the position, they've had the thing for so long that when they no longer have it, they're transitioning out of the military or transitioning out of a job they've had for decades. They don't have the title, and so what they feel like has happened is that their purpose has been taken away. It's the same thing. A job is a job. It's something that you do, and you might find fulfillment in it. You might find joy in it. You may love it, but it's not who you are. Your purpose should not change regardless of what your role is. The stages of life thing is really important too. I think so. And I feel like we've been talking about that a lot. We've been talking about that a lot. Can you talk about that a little bit, how your purpose changes through the various stages of life? There's some hope in that, I think. I think so too. Particularly if you're in a job that you don't necessarily like, or you're in a role that you don't necessarily love, or you're having a bad day. Yeah, right. The stages of life are very real, and we need to understand that.
I feel like that's a really big topic too, like the stages of life. And when you think about a person that is, like you were saying, like a young person, you know, like a college age person, they're trying to figure out life, or high school, they're trying to figure out what am I going to do after that? And then what am I going to do, you know, for college? And then what am I going to do after that with my career? And then maybe you get married and then you have kids, and then your kids grow up and they're kind of moving on with their own things. And then you're maybe able to pursue your career again, or you're able to, now you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do now?
Right.
And so your purpose is always changing. And so I don't believe that that means that your overall purpose changes, like what you mentioned.
The big
about
purpose
how,
stays the
right,
same.
That your purpose and we're talking about as a Christian person, your purpose is to, with your life, is to give glory to God and to live life in a way that's pleasing to Him. And so your overall purpose, that never changes. But the things that you do in your life, you know, the way that you live out your purpose, I think looks different with every stage.
Live out your purpose, right?
And so, and to me, I feel like that's kind of the key phrase, is the way that you live it out just kind of looks different with each phase. It's going to look different when you're in high school, and then when you're in college, and then when you maybe get married, or you're pursuing your career, and then when you have children, and then when you're you know, a little bit older and your children are moving out of the house. And the way that you live it out just looks a little bit different with each stage of life. And I do feel like that gives a lot of hope. And that can be really encouraging for us to think about, not that you're kind of hoping to rush through this phase of life so that you can get to the next thing. But I feel like there's a lot of hope in that, because you can be even plan ahead for the future and know that if I do this now, and if I'm living out my purpose well in this phase, then what could that look like in the next phase of my life? And how can that, you know, impact my kids? And how can that impact my friends, my coworkers? And if I'm living out this phase well, you mentioned when you're in a job that you don't maybe necessarily like. I feel like that could be a really, really tough position to be in. But if you're keeping that in the forefront of your mind, that the way I'm living out my purpose here can really make an impact in maybe to my boss, to my coworkers, maybe other people that are in the same position that I'm in, that are not really happy with, you know, their job. And maybe that will never change for you, the job. But the way that you live out your purpose can make such a difference in that particular phase of your life. And so I feel like just looking to maybe, how can the way that I'm doing that now, how can that impact my future or these people's future that I'm kind of, you know, with? And so I feel like that can be such an encouragement, and it can give a lot of hope.
And when you're younger and you're working harder and longer hours and dealing with young children, that's a stage, it's a phase, and you're going to move through that. And you will mature, you know, physically, which may mean you slow down a little bit, but you'll mature emotionally, hopefully, and intellectually, and be able to do some things you couldn't when you were younger. And you transition through these phases of life, and transition is not something to be dreaded or feared, but it is something to be understood. I don't need to forever identify as the parent of young children, so that when I move out of that phase, I now feel like I've lost my purpose. Nor do I need to identify with any particular stage that I'm in. This is where I am, and this is where I need to be.
And we were talking a little bit about in the context of marriage the other night too, in that when your marriage looks different through every stage of life as well. If you're a married person and you have young kids at home, then that kind of looks a little bit different. But if you're living out your purpose as a spouse in the way that you should while you have little kids in your house, then that's going to impact what your marriage looks like through every phase of your life, so that when your kids are older and now they've moved out of the house, the way that you have lived out your purpose previously is going to impact your relationship and your marriage, you know, in that way as well.
That's great. And it's so important. We'll do another episode maybe on the stages of marriage, but if you don't handle that right in your marriage, you're going to end up as two people living in the same space who really have no relationship. And it can be that as you move through any phase of your life. I think an important aspect of all of this, because then someone says, okay, I hear everything that you're saying, I get it, but how do I know if I should work more, if I should try to get the promotion, if I should go back to school, if I should do all of these things? I think probably the word that helps us to understand all of that would be priority. We need to spend a lot of time talking about priority, but generally as it relates to this conversation, understanding your priority or your priorities is absolutely essential to also understanding your purpose in this stage of your life. If your number one priority is to please God, then that you need to work toward that. How can I best do that? Being the person that I am, with the opportunities that I have and the skills that I have, I've determined in my life, and we've talked about this often, I can't create opportunity necessarily, but I can take advantage of those opportunities. That's what I can do.
Right.
God can create them. I can take advantage of them though, and I should go through those doors. And if the opportunity for a promotion comes up or the opportunity for, whatever, I need to take advantage of those opportunities. That's what I can do. But they need to fall, our understanding of them needs to fall within the context of priorities. When you understand my priority, first of all, is my relationship with God, and then my relationship with my spouse, then my relationship with my kids, and those other relationships with my relationship with work, and those things, then we can answer that question. How hard should I work at work? Should I take more hours? Should I try to get a job that helps me to earn more money? Well, if it impacts the other relationships in your life, then the answer may be no. It may be yes. You have to do that. But once your priorities are right, then you can clearly see your purpose at this phase or stage of your life. When the priorities shift, again, particularly with children, maybe your income, other relationships outside of your home, when those things shift over time, and they will, then your purpose, your ability to work more, to earn more, to do more, to travel more, to whatever, that will shift as well. And you can shift with that. And I don't think you should ever feel bad about not being able to do what someone in a different stage or phase of life is doing.
Yeah.
We compare, and that's kind of the premise of this show, is stop comparing your stage of life, your phase of life, your family, your financial situation, your opportunities, your resources. Stop comparing that to someone else's and what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing is, like you said, we talked about it last time, just that comparison, getting into that comparison trap. And I've heard it said before, and maybe I said it last time, that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that's so true because when we're talking about living out our purpose and the way that we live it out and living it out well in each phase of life, when we're comparing this phase to someone else's, maybe they're like 3 steps ahead of us or in a different phase than we are. It's an unfair comparison, but it can steal so much of our the joy of life from us when we're doing that, and it can really rob us of being able to live out our purpose in that particular stage of our life when we're looking at that. And so our opportunities are different than other people, our stage of life is different, and when we're constantly looking at other people and what they're doing, it can really rob us of precious time and just the way that we're living that out, and we will miss opportunities that have been given to us when we're constantly looking at other people and how they're living. It's just not fair.
It's not fair. This is illustrated so well in the New Testament. There's a parable in the New Testament, the parable of the talents, and it's a big story. Go take a look at it. But what we see is that the master, the guy with all the money, gave to his stewards, the people who were caring for his money, 3 different stewards, 3 different amounts of money. He came back eventually and asked to see what they had done with that, how they had invested that and what they had turned that into. And what's interesting about that story, a lot of things, but one of the things that's interesting is he didn't compare those 3 individuals to each other. And he didn't compare the person with more to the person with less. The only thing he wanted to know and the only thing he wanted to see was, how have you taken what I have given to you and stewarded over it and taken care of it and turned it into more? And in our lives, we need to take the pressure off of ourselves. We put so much pressure on ourselves that is ridiculous. I'm not someone else, you're not someone else, and we need to not worry about what someone else has or what they're doing with what they have. We simply need to recognize, this is what I have right now. This is the time I have. These are the relationships I have. These are the resources I have. This is the intellectual capacity that I have. This is my earning ability. This is what I have. These are the opportunities and the open doors that have been presented to me. This is what I have, and I just need to pay attention to it and to steward over what I have, not what someone else has.
And I think that's such a freeing thought. Could be
such
a freeing thought for us.
It should be.
And the way that I think about it all the time, and just looking at it from a Christian perspective, like what we've been saying, is that someday I'm going to have to answer for how I lived out my purpose and how I stewarded over my resources and how I stewarded over my relationships, and that's mine. That's going to be what I have to answer for, not for someone else's, not for how they did this over here, not how they pursued that opportunity over here, but I'm going to have to answer for how I lived out my purpose in these areas of my life, and how I handled the resources and the opportunities that were given my way, because we've all been put where we are for a reason,
Right.
and we've been given these things for a
Right.
reason. And so it can be really freeing to think about, someday I'm gonna have to answer for this, so I should probably pay attention to how I'm doing that in every phase of life.
As we talk about all of this, I think there are two other aspects to this, and we've got a couple of minutes, so we'll just hit them briefly. But two other aspects to this. Purpose. There's a big purpose. You need to find your purpose within the purpose, and your purpose will change over time. Phases and stages of life and availability of resources. Your priorities help to dictate those things. So understanding that, you have to also understand that you may be in a phase of life or a stage of life or a time of life, a job that you don't necessarily love, but it doesn't mean that that's not your purpose right now. That may be your purpose right now. So there's a second aspect to this, and when we're talking about purpose, we also need to talk briefly about passion, because passion is really important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
3 P's. We've got 3 P's for you. Passion, purpose is the first one, passion is the second one. You can use whatever word that you want to. But understanding this principle of stewardship and understanding the principle that things change over time and you're on this journey and you're going to end up somewhere else, you have to take whatever it is you're doing right now and do it to the absolute best of your ability. Some people get stuck, not because they're in a bad job or not because they're in a bad stage of life or they're not where they're going to end up. I don't think any of us are where we're going to end up. They get stuck because they go, I don't like this and I'm not going to work as hard as I could. I think along with all of this, understanding purpose, we have to realize there's a responsibility to be passionate about whatever it is we're doing.
Yeah.
You may be at the bottom of the totem pole. You may be at the top. You may have transitioned out of your job. You're looking for another job, whatever it is. Be passionate about it. This is interesting too. I just thought of this as we're talking. Even people who may be in the middle of a transition and they don't know what the next thing is, they've retired or they're not working at the place they were anymore and now they have to find something else. Some people will sit on the couch and say, well, when it comes to me.
Right. Yeah.
That's not passionate.
Yeah.
Where you are right now is your purpose. That is what you need to steward over, this space that you're in right now. So be passionate about it. Go out and find it and make it happen.
Yeah, we homeschool our 2 younger kids. I think we mentioned last time we have 2 adult kids, and then we have a couple of kids that are kind of like looking towards middle school years, I guess. And we're homeschooling them. And this is something that I tell them all the time. Like this is not going to be what you do forever. I mean, maybe you don't like school. Maybe you don't like what you're doing right now. But this is what you have to do right now. This is what you're supposed to do right now. This is your work right now. And so be happy about it. Be passionate about it and pour everything that you have into it and be the best that you can be in this area. Yeah. And I'm always telling them, like, maybe you're not going to get straight A's, but as long as I know you're doing your best. And I think that's kind of the key is, I was just thinking about that as you were talking about that. It's just doing your best, everything to the best of your ability, even if you're doing something that you don't necessarily enjoy doing or like doing or never saw yourself doing, is being passionate about that. But then also I feel like the other side of that is being passionate about if you are in a place that you're happy about it, that you are, maybe you're in a place that you always hope that you would be.
Right.
Maybe you are someone that, you always wanted to have children and you've been blessed now with children and it looks a little bit different than maybe you thought it would. And you're like, oh, wow.
Right.
Be passionate about that. If you're, if you've been looking to something for a while and now it's kind of finally come for you, I feel like sometimes it can be, you kind of get to a place of complacency. You're like, okay, now I've arrived. Now I've gotten to the place that I've always been hoping for. And it can be like, okay, well, now I'm here. So I'm just going to kind of phone it in and I'm just going to be,
I made it.
It could be really easy to become kind of complacent in that. And so I think even if you're somewhere that you're maybe not happy about, in a job that you don't like or whatever, but also if you've kind of feel like you've arrived, which I don't think any of us ever have, but if you've been looking to something for a while, now you have that, just continue to be passionate about that and look to be the best that you can be in that particular area.
Yeah, that's great. Be passionate about the space you're standing in right now.
Yeah.
And that is the key to moving forward. The last thing, and this is just, we'll just throw this out there. The last P, 3 Ps, it's purpose, passion. The last one is persistence. Be persistent. Don't stop. Don't stop. Really, you don't stop living until you stop. And some people stop when they're very young and have a lot to offer. And very young is relative.
Yeah.
They have the energy, they have the life, they have the ability, but they just go, I've done it. And sometimes that's passion, but sometimes it's just persistence. Keep pushing. If you're still drawing breath, there's more for you to do, and you can do that. You need to be persistent.
Yeah.
This is a huge, huge conversation. I'm sure we'll come back to it again.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk so much more about that.
We could talk so much more about
I think
it.
each of those passion,
Persistence, yeah, and purpose is the first one. Yeah,
purpose, passion, persistence.
I'm glad one of us
all
is
those
paying
things,
attention. Yeah,
all those things in itself, I feel like we could take so much more time on. But
so we'll come back to those. But think on these things. Purpose is not this mystical, crazy. What's my purpose?
Yeah.
Your purpose is to be the very best version of yourself. We could use that phrase, or to be fully what you were created to be, and that changes over time and space. But the space that you're standing in right now. Be passionate about it and be persistent, and you really will fulfill that purpose.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yep.
Until next time.
It's good. Until next time.
If you haven't liked, please like, subscribe,
share,
comment, and we'll come back and do this again.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you.